Well, welcome everyone to Dementia Chats. I'm Lori La Bey, the founder of Dementia Chats and Alzheimer's Speaks, and my mother had dementia for 30 years. And so I designed this program because I learned so many beautiful lessons through my mother's teachings of just living life with dementia. I just thought the voice of dementia needed to be heard. And so today you're going to be able to hear from 6 people living with dementia, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves in just a second. But prior to that, Eilon is my co-facilitator. And Eilon, do you want to go ahead and just introduce yourself quickly?
My name is Eilon Caspi. I'm a gerontologist and dementia behavior specialist. With dementia behavior consulting, both of my grandmothers had dementia. I've been in the aging field for 24 years. I'm here to learn from your lived experience and share what I learned along the way. And assist Lori with facilitating this conversation.
Great, thank you. True, would you please introduce yourself?
Truthful, loving kindness. My current diagnosis is mild cognitive impairment, and I am assistant administrator for Dementia Mentors, and I'm on the advisory council for USA Dementia Action Alliance.
Great, thank you. Bob, can you introduce yourself?
My name is Bob Savage. I live in Plantsville, Connecticut in assisted living. I was diagnosed about 2 years ago with early stages of Alzheimer's. And fortunately, it's moving slowly, although I can feel it coming. And I'm very, very active in doing some public speaking, doing advocacy, and I'm really excited about the life I'm living here right now.
Great, thank you. Pauline?
My name is Pauline Gordon, and I was diagnosed with vascular dementia 5 years ago. My father died from Alzheimer's several years ago, so I've seen it kind of from both sides. And I'm involved in a lot of different advocacy opportunities with Dementia Mentors and Dementia Action Alliance.
Great, thank you. Michael?
My name is Michael Ellenbogen, and I'm an international dementia advocate, and I've been living with dementia for many, many years now.
Okay, thank you. Craig?
My name is Craig Hankey, diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. I'm an advocate in Dementia Mentors and also involved in Forget-Me-Not Lewy body dementia.
Great, thank you. And to wrap us up with the introductions, Harry?
The other guy. my name's Harry Urban. I live in Pennsylvania. I was diagnosed now over 14 years ago with Alzheimer's. I created a Facebook group called Forget Me Not, and I'm a Purple Angel ambassador and a Sentimenta ambassador.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, for today's topic, I think it's going to be a really interesting one, and one that I think really the world needs to have a conversation about, because it's got to weigh on everybody's minds. And that is for people living with dementia. You know, they know that they're more dependent on their spouse or their care partners, and that there can be a fear of what will happen to them if something happens to their loved one who's caring for them. And so, Pauline, you brought this topic up, so I'm going to have you go ahead and kick it off if you don't mind.
Okay. Before I had dementia, I was kind of the leader of the household. I made the most money, I paid the bills, I managed a lot of different activities in the household. And then as I developed dementia, they gradually started shifting more and more and more to my husband, where he's taken over a lot of those responsibilities. My math skills aren't too good. I can't do the balancing and all of that. So, but what really frightens me is I've become more and more dependent on my husband for travel, for driving, for many things. And I think he's older than me. He's probably 6 years older than me, 6 or 7 years older than me. And I think, what will happen to me if something happens to him? You know, and it's a really terrifying feeling to think, oh my goodness, I'm so vulnerable.
Yeah, have you had that conversation with him?
I have not. I have not had that conversation with him. That would be a really good idea.
Okay. You know, because I think just from what I hear from care partners, they worry about that too. And so I think it would be a great time to open up that door, to have that conversation, and get things out on the table, and even discuss a backup plan. And as much as they also worry about, if you go first, what is their life? Who are they going to be? I mean, those are all important conversations. True, you had something that you wanted to say as well.
I guess I wanted to say I'm in the same boat. My husband is 6 years older than I am, and I have been so concerned about it that I had him go do one of those, what do they call it, a stress test?
Mm-hmm.
And a couple other things, hey, you you better do something about this, buddy.
And how did he handle the stress test and going in? Apparently he did.
He did. He actually handled it very well.
Mm-hmm.
He was, he thought it was kind of funny, actually.
And so have you had like an in-depth conversation on how you feel about this topic?
Actually, I don't think so. We should. I agree. It would be a very good, healthy thing to do.
Mm-hmm. And it's, I would imagine too, it's a hard one. None of us like to think about that part of life, losing somebody. And then I would imagine there would also be the weight of, will that be even more of a burden to them in that conversation, knowing that you're afraid of that, but yet you can't get to the positive side of that, of that conversation without talking about it. And none of us are getting out of here alive, and none of us know who's going to go first. And there are some great preventative things that people could do to try to ensure that. Again, there's no absolute in that at all. Bob, how about you? Do you have that fear of your wife?
I do have the fear. There's no doubt about it. But I've been very fortunate that, excuse me, my oldest daughter and her husband and I just have a wonderful time together. And they come and visit me every Sunday. Now it's my daughter, so she's much younger than I. But I see if something happens to my primary car partner, that she and he will take over a lot of that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really blessed with that, and that helps to relieve the pressure around that. Although there are some things that my care partner is doing that my daughter can't do, so I still have that worry about what would happen.
Yeah. Well, and your situation is a little bit different, if you don't mind me sharing, that you are living apart from your wife right now. Right. So can you give people a little bit of background on that? Because I think that would be helpful for them as well.
And why that happened? Or
mm-hmm.
Well, it was 6 months into my diagnosis, and I have a temper, but nothing like the temper I had when I was first diagnosed. And what was happening, there was a fear from my wife's point of view as to what she'd have to give up as I progressed. And my fear would be also what she gave up, and then that terrible word called burden. And so we were reaching a point where we were both angry. Fear creates anger from my perspective, and the fear of unknowing what was coming, and also the fear of what you're told is coming. And so there was one point there where we were arguing and screaming, and my hand was going up this way. And I looked up at myself and I said, my God, who is this person screaming like that? And the impulse there was to hit. If I would have started hitting, I wouldn't have stopped. We cooled down and said, this has got to stop. And this is when I started negotiating assisted living. And she's living in our home. And right now, I haven't lost my 10%. So right now, we're come together for a birthday today. We're both saying how blessed we are to be in this position. This is kind of different, unique, where yep. she's having a wonderful life. I'm having a good life, and we're coming together and supporting each other in those things.
Well, and one of the things that I really wanted you to tell our audience about that is I think that there's great fear of maybe having to move into a community type setting. And you seem to have found a graceful way to be able to do that.
Yes. I tell myself so many times that how fortunate I am to be here. I'm in a very progressive place for assisted living. They're supporting me in so many ways for me to get out there and speak. I could not do anything like this alone. Right? They help arrange. They have the connections, and all I do is speak. But you know what it's like when you have an opportunity in front of a crowd, and you tell your story, and you change that damn stigma in a way. That's so rewarding. So I'm very. This would not have happened to have been at home because I have no license. I have no car. And you know what that means, right? Would you drive me here? You do that 4 times, and you're in trouble. So
Lori, Bob, I think what you said has tremendous value. I wish any person with dementia who experienced similar situation with a family member or a friend or a coworker, what you did is very courageous, and I wish a lot of people would hear that story.
Yeah, I know. When I first,
it's a preventative measure, you know.
The 2 words, assisted living. Just think what that means.
So what does it mean to you?
Well, I'm a male. That means I have no more rights anymore. Right? I have to live in a certain place. I can argue and make my point of view, but the decisions are made. It's not only my wife making decisions. It's the whole organization, right? But I didn't realize when I first came here, it took me a while. I was a little bit of a troublemaker, right? I didn't want to be here. I didn't think it was going to work out so well and that sort of thing. But I also knew I had to leave. So that was a strong motivation.
And I hear that you are in one of the best places in Connecticut, the Alzheimer's Research Center of Connecticut, right?
It's now called Live Well. They changed their name.
Oh, good for them.
And it is some of the things that they're working on to improve this whole thing is unbelievable. And I'm playing a very integral part of that.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Craig, how about you? Do you have a fear of what if something happens to your wife?
Yes, I do. In fact, it's compacted by the fact that with the new insurance regulations and laws that are out there, as of right now, she doesn't have insurance because we just simply can't afford the deductibles and the copays. So she's not getting regular checkups like I would like her to have. But without, like Paula and I used to be the main breadwinner, and I would take charge of the finances and the bills. But right now, if I tried to do that, I'd be a total mess. I get a bill in the mail now, and I just look at it, and it doesn't make sense to me. So I hand it right to my wife, and she takes care of it. So losing her, I do have a fear of that, because not only losing her for that reason, but she drives me everywhere I need to go. If I need to go anywhere, she drives me. She manages my medications, where to the point where I still question her on something. And now I'm getting reduced on a medication that I'm getting taken off of. So I look on it, I count the pills, and I know that one's different now. And I still question her on that, but I wouldn't be able to do my own medications whatsoever. I've become the worst backseat driver, though, that you can imagine. I've had this. To the point where it's almost like I'm paranoid when she makes a turn or whatever. I'm like, you need to slow down a little more or something. And she's actually doing very well driving, but it's just my mind is like playing tricks on me.
Do you use your brake on your side? My mom used
yeah.
to use her brake on her side all the time.
Yep. And then support while I'm in difficult situations. Like I live in a relatively small city, and if we go to, say, the city that I grew up in that we came from, I have like paranoia attacks, and anxiety attacks. And if it wasn't for her there comforting me and telling me it's going to be okay, just don't look around, just look straight down and not see all the crazy stuff that's going on in a big city. Without that support also, and a reminder, just to have that reminder there, is a great thing. The other thing I have to watch that she keeps an eye on with me is my weight. I don't know why, but since I've been diagnosed, I'll unless she stops me, I'll eat nonstop from morning till night. And so she's there as a reminder to watch my weight and watch what I eat. So it would definitely be a big loss if I didn't have her around.
Thank you for sharing those things. I like that you gave some specifics, because I think it's really easy for us to go down the path of, the physical needs that you have, and the transportation, the medication, the finances, those types of things. But that emotional support and that companionship, what I hear from so many, and I think this is with pretty much any couple, it's, they're kind of your security blanket. You just know if they're by your side, good or bad, you're getting through it. And, we all like to have that security blanket. So that I think I would imagine would feel compounded in your situation, in terms of who to trust and who really knows you and gets you as a person for your needs. Bob, you had a comment?
Our society is turning everything over to the care partner. The financial responsibility, we're losing our houses, we're losing our cars. The energy, is very little support for them to have any breaks. There should be, in a normal society, there should be some opportunity for her to have him or her to have a break and to have some support. And we just walked away from it. That's the part that really concerns me.
Mm-hmm. That's a very valid point, because with that respite, which everybody needs some rest, and a break to kind of get recharged and re-energized, that's how we stay healthier longer. That reduces stress. And I will say, as a daughter caring for my mom and for my dad who had brain tumor, I never took a break. I mean, I just kept taking things on, and I worked and I worked and I worked until, and I've told this story, but we might have some new listeners, where I had girlfriends that wanted me to come for coffee, and I was having a really bad morning. I was just exhausted. Things weren't going right. And I called them back and I said, I can give you 15 minutes, like I'm the queen bee coming to town. Like, pull out the red carpet, here she comes. She's going to give us 15 minutes of her time. And I still giggle that I said that, because that's just so not me. But and I said it to get them off my back, because they kept bugging me, and I didn't have time for it, because I felt the pressure of caring for my folks. And I went there, and we laughed and we cried for 2 hours. And they filled my soul, because I as a care partner got so disconnected. And so, Bob, you bring up a really, really good point, that everybody needs to stay connected, people with dementia and people caring for them. And, we can't get so funnel focused, because it really throws us off balance, if we don't have those outside supports. And so it would be great if government and organizations would understand the magnitude of the importance of respite for care partners from a health standpoint, but also for people living with dementia.
Right.
Nobody wants to be tied to somebody 24/7. I mean, we like knowing they're there, but when you're feeling tied to them, like there's nobody else,
Right.
then that's where the fear really is compounded.
And Lori, just to add to it, one of the things that a lot of people don't know is when you are a family care partner and you're doing it for many years, and we're talking about people in more later stages now, you've done it for 7 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. There is a statistic out there that, according to one estimation, 30 or so % of the family care partners, I think it was spouses, older spouses, die before the person with dementia. So now all the promises, I'm not going to put you in a nursing home. And so I think that the message is not to scare the family care partners, but it's to encourage. And I know it's easy to say, take a break when you don't have help or you don't like to ask for help. But still, if you're not going to take a break as a care partner, there's a high likelihood that you're going to burn out, you collapse into the role, you're captive in the role. This is an older generation, they don't like to ask for help. And then they're isolated, they develop health conditions, a lot of them have depression, and it escalates, and there's a cascade, and then they develop serious health conditions, and they may die.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think by having these conversations, with your spouse or your care partner, if you give them permission, because a lot of times, and I know that was me. I didn't feel like I could or that I should. One was time, but another was kind of a society standard that no, this is my role and I've got to be there 24/7. And and granted, it's a very important role. To be in relationship with anybody, dementia or not, is an important, valuable role. But we have to stay balanced too.
Lori, related to that is guilt.
Mm-hmm.
The guilt of not doing it is I think is a bigger drain on the person. That I should be doing more. I should be doing more. That is very challenging.
Yeah, true.
I've heard other specialists say it's really important for us with dementia to begin getting used to more than one care partner.
Mm.
And I think this is where part of that comes in. And my husband spends pretty close to 1 day a week, a good part of 1 day a week, over helping some family friends. Those family friends would be there for me, but that also gives him respite, and he's helping them. So it's not, and he's very needed. So it's not a feeling like he's needing something. Instead, he's giving, and that works for him.
Mm-hmm.
If he's giving, then he can do it.
Yeah.
He can't be the one that needs.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think that gets back to kind of this societal standard that if you are in need, you are weak. And it's like, no, if you are in need, you are human. It's okay. And I think we've gotten so far away of, living in community. I mean, think back when you were younger, it was very different. We lived in community. We helped our neighbors. And no one thought twice about it. In all ages, it was intergenerational. And it's sad. It really saddens me that we've gotten so far away from that and seeing how, what a tool that was that we've thrown aside. It really is a beautiful tool to connect.
And sometimes neighbors can be that. Our neighbors before were very much that. Mm-hmm. They were very much part of a tight-knit community with us. Now they changed, and we approached them. They are not interested in having any kind of a relationship. They're on the other side of the fence. We're on our side, and they want to keep it that way. And so part of it, you can only work with what you've got.
Yeah, true. Harry, what about you?
My situation is a little bit different. I was always in charge. I was always the leader. And then 51 years ago, I got married, and that all changed.
You know what the husband's last is always the last word in the house. You know what the word is?
What?
Yes, dear, I'll do it. I'll go throw the garbage.
Well,
Yes, dear. Yes, dear. You're right.
in our situation, she always managed the household, and I built the kingdom. And it worked so well for us because she handled all the bills. She handled all the day-to-day life problems that our family had. And, but unfortunately, that handicapped me. That to this day, I couldn't tell you what bills we have, or anything else. And that always concerned me because I thought to myself, what happens if something happens to Hazel? I would have no idea. So we did have that talk. And Hazel, being the perfect house manager she is, she put all my fears to bed. That she made steps that all the bills would be taken care of if anything should happen to her. You know, so like my daughter would step in and she would take over that role. And she's knowledgeable of every aspect of our life that she would be capable of doing that. And we also realized that for the past 51 years, Hazel had a very important part in her life of running our household. Then when I got dementia, she went through a period of she didn't need those skills because we weren't actively building our empire. And she got to thinking, oh my God, here I am in midlife with no skills. What happens if I would pass before her? How would she be taken care of? And that's why she got involved in working. Now, she wanted to find a career that she could do that didn't consume her, but satisfied her needs. And that's how she got into income taxes. It's a seasonal job, even though she works year round. In the summertime, it's very minimal hours she puts in. But for the tax season, she's busy, and it satisfies her needs. So we have a very unique situation in our lives that we created a situation that if something would happen to me, I know Hazel would be able to survive. If something would happen to her, she knows I would be able to survive.
Thank you, Harry. We were having a little typing noise in there. We were trying to figure out who it is, and the only one unmuted was you, and we could tell you weren't typing. So that's why we were giggling a little bit. So sorry about that. But thank you for sharing that, because it's, you know, it's looking at both of your positions in there and trying to come to some resolve. Bob, go ahead.
One of the things that was a miracle of a decision I made when I was 40, which I had no idea how important it would be, is to sign up for a long-term care plan. And it signed up to one of the most reputable, John Hancock, which is just a wonderful organization. And they're holding on to and I work for the state of Connecticut. So the negotiation is from a group rather than they negotiate every year. So my wife right now, I don't have to worry about, she doesn't have to worry about expenses for the rest of my life because this is covering by the long-term care. Another fortunate mistake, fortunate thing I did without realizing at the time that I'd ever need long-term care. And so she's free. She had some finances herself, but she was afraid that that would all be consumed in no time. So there's a real relaxation on both our parts around it.
That's good. And a lot of people don't realize long-term insurance is there. A lot of times people will look into it once a diagnosis or an illness hits, and then it's too late.
Boy, do they love that.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Michael, let's hear from you. What are your thoughts on this topic? Do you have a fear of what if something happens to Sherry?
Well, I've thought about it, and I was the head of household for many, many years, and the last approximately 10 years, she's been doing that and more, and I rely on her pretty much to handle most things. So if she was not around, it would be a very serious situation for me. But to be honest with you, the crazy thought process that I've had about this is that I would definitely not be burdening my daughter with this. And I also would not want to end up in an assisted living or any place like that. So the crazy thought that I've had is that I'm just going to take my money and I'm going to travel for as long as I can till it runs out. And at the end, it'll be the end. And that's the way I'm going to go out.
So you're going to be one of those that lives on a cruise ship because it's cheaper than assisted living, and that's what they always say.
I don't know if it would be a cruise ship or I would just be traveling from place to place, wherever I'd end up at. And because I don't think I can make those plans at that point. I really rely on my wife to do a lot of that. So I don't know if I'd be able to really make all those plans. Like I said, I probably wouldn't be taking my drugs any longer once that happens. And I would just be traveling, have somebody take care of me for meals, and just be enjoying the rest of my time, maybe go to a place like Mexico or somewhere and just settle down there and just relax and, probably have somebody weigh on me on, the services on what I can afford at that time, and just live out my life the best that I can to the end. And that would be it. I know there will become a time that I will run out of money, and like I said, I do not want to burden my daughter no matter what. She's got a life, and the last thing I want to do is impact that life.
Okay. Harry?
Well, daughters, we all think that we're putting a burden on our family. And we shouldn't feel that way, because they want to take on that responsibility. They feel a need to nurture us like we nurtured them. And I hear that so many times, and I don't disagree with Michael, because I feel the same way. I don't want to burden my family, but I don't think we should feel that way, because it's not a burden. We might be taking an experience from them that they want.
I'm going to add in there, and then I'm going to go to Bob and True. I would say, every family dynamic is different, and every person is different. So some people are really nurturing and they want that role. I was one of them. And, my mom lived with the disease for 30 years, and I didn't want to lose 1 minute of it, not a second. And that's how I even got into this space, is all the beautiful lessons she taught me that I wouldn't be privy to if I didn't have that experience. And someone had just is doing an article on me, and it was about purpose and passion. And in talking about that, I said, don't think that you're not going to have frustration in your life just because you're going down that path, whatever it is. You're just going to learn to deal with it a little differently. And dementia taught me to deal with stressors in a very different manner. And it made it really evident to me over time, didn't get it right away, that I couldn't control all these little pieces. And that applies to all your life. And so when you can apply some of those lessons to all of life, it truly is a gift. And again, every family dynamic is different, but I would encourage every family to have the conversation and to let them be an active player in that. because you could be giving them one of the biggest gifts of their life by playing that role. So I'm going to go to Bob and then True.
I echo what Harry was saying. I was mentioning earlier about my oldest daughter being very involved with me. We are now close friends. As a result of this, we now have conversations we would never had. We have laughter. We go back to when I was a father, she was a daughter, and how, some of the things I did, blah, blah, blah. So, but we're really close friends, and I swear she really looks forward to coming.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's wonderful. So I think what Harry is saying, if we can give him the opportunity, then you make a choice. If it's not working out, we'll let it go. But give him the opportunity, because I think she treasures are coming together.
Yeah, I'll use an example in my family. My older brother probably couldn't have done that role. It would have been really difficult for everyone involved. I mean, it's just, he's not a compassionate, empathetic person. He's just not. My younger brother probably could have and would have struggled with it, but I think would have learned some beautiful lessons. And I think one of the lessons is, and again, Michael, please don't think that anyone is judging you here on this, but one of the lessons is that our stage in life has changed. And so even like when I went through a divorce, I'm not a married woman, everything in my life changed. And it's very humbling to go through that process and to accept that your relationship has to change because you've changed. Your circumstances have changed. And I fought that for a really long time with my daughter. I really, because I wanted to be the mom in charge and have everything in control. And it was really humbling, but it made us so much closer. It was unbelievable, but it was hard for me to let go of the old Lori and accept the new Lori. And,
Right.
And then the new Lori gets empowered in different ways. And my daughter did as well in that process too. So that's just kind of an example. I'm going to go to True and then Eilon.
One of the things that we've done is we have one family member that is kind of the backup in one area. She is backup for everything to do with medical. Another family member, my stepdaughter, has said, when Dad can't do this, I'll be there. So she's kind of a backup in another area. And I think that's nice, but some people, it would be a burden. Like some family members, I feel like they would feel it's a burden. So I'm not going there. Mm-hmm. It depends on the person. If I'm a burden, no, we're not going there. If I'm a privilege, yes, it's an option.
Mm-hmm.
Very well put.
Yeah, and I think that's about matching tasks and needs up to what someone feels comfortable with. I see that all the time in families where maybe somebody needs help with their personal hygiene and showering and stuff, and all of a sudden a daughter is showering her father, and for some people that would be really uncomfortable, and for others it would be a real privilege. And there's no judgment. That's just where everyone is in whatever place and time. But we have to talk about our comfort levels, and that's an important piece of that conversation, I think. Eilon and then True.
Go ahead, True. Go ahead.
Even if I would feel a burden, there is another specific area that same person, I wouldn't be a burden. Like, say, if she was put in the charge of the financial stuff, I wouldn't be a burden. It's finding the niche.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, good point. Eilon?
So I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer here. I think that from my experience, there's tremendous variation across individuals. It's a personal choice. It's a couplehood. It's a couple's decision. It's a personal decision. It's a family decision. Every person sees the world in a different way, has different perceptions of things, and that's okay. what's encouraging, and there's no question that when one cares for another person with dementia for many years, it can be extremely challenging. As Professor Arthur Kleinman from Harvard University, who cared for his wife for several years, said, "You cannot understand caregiving until you do it."
Yes.
And he has a very powerful YouTube about his experience. Anyways, but my point, what I'm trying to get at, is that there was a lot of talk in the gerontological literature and the aging literature for decades about everything that goes wrong, the pathology and the negative experiences in this context. But luckily, in the last 15 years or so, we also see another line of research and practice and literally studying positive aspects of caring and supporting and interacting with people with dementia. And I want to just share with you real quick some of the things that I summarized from the literature. So, and this is, again, it's individual and it's a compilation, and maybe one person feels only one of these and not the others, and that's okay. So the first is, some people who care for people with dementia family members feel deep personal meaning. Maybe they haven't felt before. They feel that it's fulfilling and rewarding to them, that they have a new purpose in life, that they feel personal growth, opportunity to give back to a loved one, development of resiliency, or what Professor Arthur Kleinman called endurance. And I know, Bob, you were interested in the issue of resilience, endurance. You talked with me about it in the past. Learning about aging, what it means to grow old firsthand. Improvement in relationships. Some report on improvement in relationship, but others report, that there's deterioration. Learning to be fully present, finding joy with the person in the moment. And others report on spiritual growth and increased faith. So I think that it's important to balance and just say there's a spectrum there, and there's a personal experience and there's a personal choice as well.
I agree. Paul-Ann, and then Michael.
I think what I've learned from this conversation is it's how important it is to sit down and have the conversation with your family. I think that's the key takeaway. But, there's a flip side that I think Eilon was kind of mentioning, and that's what happens to the person who's been the care partner for all these years. I mean, they've taken on these roles, and their whole identity becomes tied up in this caretaker role. And what happens when they lose their person they're taking care of? They need to have other outlets.
Yeah, exactly. Michael?
I agree with what Eilon said. I mean, there's good and bad with this. I mean, I agree. If my daughter was to take this over, there would be a lot of learning curves that would benefit her. But at the same time, with any caregiving role, I don't care who it is, there's stress factors that come along with that job. And those stress factors, sadly to say, have an impact on that person's life. And that's the way I'm looking at it. While she would be a better person because of it, there's no doubt in my mind. But I also know it would impact her life as a career. I mean, there isn't too many caregivers out there that I've spoken with that their careers haven't been impacted. If there's a sole caregiver, their careers have been drastically impacted one way or another. So I guess the way I see it, I don't want to put her in that situation. And I wanted to ensure that I don't have that impact on her life. And I want her to have her life to be able to make the decisions that she wants to do and not to be put in the position to have to take on that decision. Sure, she would want to jump into it. There's no doubt in my mind. But the way I look at it is, would I want to be in that situation if I had to do that? Absolutely not. If I had a choice between a career and to be able to enjoy my life and not have that, I would take that easy way out. Would I do it if I had to do it? Absolutely. I would step right up to it. But I'm going to make sure she doesn't have to have that choice.
So the only thing I would say to that is that you had mentioned, that you wanted her to have choice. And in making that decision, you're taking part of her choice away. Because and I think it's really easy, Michael, for all of us, because the way we've packaged caregiving, caregiving, the word alone, I don't even like it because it says we're giving everything away. But if we start using the words more of care partner and care companion, now we're back into that relationship. And the depths that you can have in a relationship with someone who's got a chronic illness are amazing. And so I think it's really easy to look at the negative side because that's what we all talk about. And I don't think we talk enough about some of the positives. And granted, I changed careers. I gave up a very nice career to do what I'm doing today. And I know that people think that I'm this big, huge company, and I'm not. And, and I still struggle financially, to make ends meet, but I wouldn't change it because I love what I do and I love the lessons I've learned. And not everybody is like me. Don't get me wrong. I have learned that lesson. Not everybody wants my life, but again, to have that open conversation, because maybe it's not an all or not. Maybe it's a partial. Maybe she doesn't take over the whole role, but maybe there's certain things that she does. Like True had talked about, well, this person does this, or, the doctor recommending more than one. Maybe there's different ways, just like so many of you guys have come up with different ways to change our dementia care culture. Maybe it's not one way or the highway, so I would still encourage everyone to have the conversation and to have it be inclusive. And you would still have the power to say, no, I don't want you in that role. But to at least let the others have their opinion and have open conversations on even expectations and what can you really afford. Because I think each of you can see where a care partner can't always, the rabbit hole. You know what's coming. You feel very consciously about, and because I hear you guys say that all the time about not wanting to be a burden and wanting to protect them. And so even just having that conversation of opening up the door that says if it gets to be too much, or if you can't do a certain task at a certain time, I will respect that and I will honor that because I know you're taking care of you. And you can't take care of me if you don't take care of you first. So I think some of it is just that conversation that we just haven't had as a society. We haven't had as families. And I would do things very different in my family. I was the lead caregiver after my dad passed. And even, when he was ill, stepped into that role. And in our family, the way our dynamics worked was, it was a one-person role. I didn't have that conversation even with my brothers. I had expectations of them that they did not fulfill. And they, and I looked at myself as organized and they looked at me as a control freak. We had very different, and that didn't come out till after my dad's death. But if we would have had those conversations because they didn't want to step in because they knew they wouldn't meet my expectations. And we didn't have that honest conversation of, mom and dad don't want, clones of Lori. They want their relationship with you, and that's going to look different. And we didn't have that honest conversation. And we didn't look at, because we looked at one way or the highway type plan. So again, I think these are really important conversations that we should have with people. Craig, how about you? You haven't said anything for a while.
I haven't said anything for a while because I'm intrigued by what everybody else is saying. Why don't we take it to Harry?
Okay, Harry?
I totally understand what Michael's saying. I have a daughter and I have a son that chose not to be part of my life when I was diagnosed with dementia. Even though they are blood relatives, the faith. I'm choosing my words very carefully here, but my faith and trust in them would never be there. You know, now if I didn't have my other daughter, I mean, she's in total harmony with me, and if she wasn't around, instead of forcing this on my blood children, who I don't have faith in, I would get an outside agency organization to handle my affairs. Now that's we're getting very personal with me now, because I'm at a point now that what happens is something would happen to Hazel. What happens is something happened to Patty. You know, I had no backup plan for that. None. You know, even though I think I have my life under control, just because I have another son and daughter doesn't mean they would step up to the opportunity. They had ample time. They had 14 years to step up to the opportunity of caring and chose not to. So, you know, I don't want to cross that bridge.
Michael, you want to go ahead?
You know, something you mentioned that, you know, they can take over, and if they can't deal with it, then they could end up finding another resource for you. Well, that's kind of hard when somebody like me doesn't want to end up in an assisted living, and they know that. Mm-hmm. If they end up dealing with that, if they have to cross that road, they'll live with a guilt trip for the rest of their life. I talk to so many caregivers, and I can't begin to tell you how many of them beat themselves up every day that they had to end up giving up on their loved one to put them in an assisted living. I mean, when you have somebody who's really nice, who's willing to take on the responsibility. I mean, my daughter would never turn me down if I was to ask her. Never. It's in her nature to want to do it. She would not even have an idea of what she'd be getting herself into by taking on such a responsibility. She wouldn't think twice to give up her job. I guess as a father, I have to think ahead and think what's in her best interest. Just like I've tried to bring her up all her life and what was best for her. And sometimes you have to make sacrifices in life. And I guess I'm thinking that I have to think above and beyond what she would think and make the right choice for her. So this is what's best for her in her life. I understand what you're saying, Lori, that there's some good benefits that she would learn out of it. And I agree. But at the same time, there's a lot of things that just outweigh the good and the bad that I just can't put her in that situation. I just can't do it. And I rather it be an impact on my life than hers. I mean, I've had to deal with my own mother. I'm taking care of my mother now. And I shouldn't even say I'm taking care of it. My wife is taking care of it. You know, because we're dealing with my mother who's dealing with dementia. And my God, I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. You know, and it's terrible that my own wife has to take care of that, who's my own mother. So there is no way I would ever put that burden on anybody else. I just could never do that.
I really respect your opinion, Michael, and where you're coming from, and I'm going to get emotional. And the sacrifice. I mean, you've really thought about this, and still going out of this life, no matter how, as a father first. And that's, again, there's no right or wrong, and none of these are easy decisions, but they have to be heartfelt decisions And so I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I still encourage people to have a conversation though. And maybe even have that conversation with her as to why you chose that, Michael, because she could have a lot of guilt thinking she wasn't good enough.
She'll listen to the Lori La Bey show.
You know, because it's just important for us to talk. It's just important for us to talk. Well, our hour is up, but I always like to spin around and see if anybody has any further comments. So, True, while I wipe my tears away, go ahead.
How did you know I was going to raise my hand?
I was just starting in the corner.
Okay, Harry, looking back at our conversation in the last hour, are you sure you want to share that publicly?
Truthful, I have no secrets in my life.
Okay.
I made what I said. I had those talks with my son and daughter.
Mm-hmm.
They know exactly how I feel, and there's no hard feelings there. You know, it's just we live different lives, and they have to respect mine, and I have to respect theirs.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Bob, any last comment?
I can't remember what it was, so I'll pass.
Okay. Paul Ann, any last comment?
I just really appreciate the conversation today. It really gave me so much to think about. I mean, I think I kind of have this plan in mind, but it gave me a lot to think about in terms of what needs to be discussed.
Great. Michael, any last comments from you?
Just a comment, I guess, with what Truth was saying. You know, we talk about some very tough and hard subjects here, and sometimes we kind of pour our hearts out with some of these things, and that's just life. And I think the good that hopefully comes out of this is people learn from these issues. I mean, they're you know, not everything's easy. And I think, you know, it's going to be different for everybody. You know, what works for me will not work for most people, you know, and that's just the way it is. And I think people need to really give it a lot of thought. And like you said, Lori, have a box of tissues nearby.
Yeah. Thank you. Craig, how about you? Any last thoughts?
I just have a question for Mike. He talks about not wanting to have his daughter make those decisions. But what happens when you get to the point where you can't make decisions? Who's going to do that for you then?
Well, that's a possibility that might happen. But as long as I'm capable of making any partial decision, and I think I'm going to be able to do that for a long time. My daughter has the capability. I mean, my daughter makes good money. It's not a money issue. You know, I got some funds away that if God forbid something was to happen, my daughter can use the funds. But the point of the matter is, she kind of knows how I feel. My wife definitely knows how I feel. I'm sure the two have spoken about it, even though I have not directly spoken to my daughter. So I think that as long as I can make any decision to run away, I will be doing that. And I think that will always be embedded in my head. It will always be embedded in my head, even to the point that my mind's wiped out with the majority of things. I mean, I think about those things almost on a daily basis. There are certain things that I try to keep in my mind on a daily basis for that specific reason, because I do not want to forget about it.
Okay. Anything else, Craig?
Nope.
Okay, Harry, any last comment?
Yeah, I'm done with. I'm glad we're done in time that I can go outside now and sit on my bench.
And contemplate.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Harry. Bob, I'm going to ask you one last time if you had any last thoughts that you wanted to share.
The last is I have 4 children, and there's one that stepped up. and the others are so busy. And so there's a balance here. You know, they pick up some of the part of it, but the wonderful part is the wonderful joy I have with my oldest daughter. So the others will play a role whenever they want to play a role. They know where I stand.
Okay. Eilon, how about you?
Well, I want to echo Paulan's words that there's a lot. This is a critically important conversation that is rarely taking place especially in a public forum. I think every community in the world where people with dementia live should have that conversation. That's why your Dementia Chats platform is so critically important. I always knew it from day one. You are leading the way, and this is cutting edge. You are courageous, all of you, to talk about those issues in the open like that, and enable and encourage other people to talk about it in their families. So thank you for that.
Great. Well, again, for our listeners, we encourage you to, share this with your family, your friends, your community, and to think about a conversation. What questions should we address in this conversation of what if something happens, and how do you want to live the rest of your life? What are your wishes, and who do you need to let know? I think that would be really powerful. If you are listening to this and have comments to that effect, we'd love to hear those